Hey, what's up? It's Mark.
It's John.
We're from Dirty Honey, and you're watching Heavy Consequence on Consequence of Sound.
Hey, it's Spencer from Heavy Consequence at Consequence of Sound. I'm here with Mark and John from Dirty Honey. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
What's up?
Cool. Well, I saw you guys last year open for Slash up in Port Chester in New York at the Capitol Theater. And I got to say, it was one of the better responses I've seen for an opening act. And I can imagine, there's a lot of people there who probably weren't familiar with your music. By the end, you had a rousing ovation. Pretty cool. Can you talk about that experience, opening for such an iconic artist as Slash and then trying to kind of win over new audiences?
Yeah, that, I've said kind of all along, those were my favorite gigs I think we've done so far, those and the Alter Bridge Skillet shows, just because, those fans are very, their musical knowledge is pretty deep. If you're there for Slash and Miles Kennedy, you're already going way deeper than Guns N' Roses. So they're eager to hear new music and check some new stuff out. And when it's really good, they're very appreciative of it. And same with Alter Bridge, that's like a step deeper down the rabbit hole than say Creed or just Miles' solo stuff. So yeah, those have been really good shows, and that's certainly a byproduct of why we're doing so well.
Cool. What about for you, John? How was that opening for Slash?
Yeah, it was incredible. I just remember the first show we did. We're sound checking, and I was kind of geeking on the fact that I knew Slash was already in the building, and just the fact that he could hear me playing guitar was sort of more. Of course, I've heard him play guitar before, and he's the reason I play guitar, one of the reasons. But to know that was like, wow, dude, he can hear me sound checking right now.
Pretty cool.
It's really cool.
John actually had a moment when we were kind of up for doing those shows, and her manager was like, yeah, we sent the song to Slash and he approved it. And, whether or not that's true, I don't know. But I remember John was like, so Slash has heard me play guitar, and he just took a couple seconds in his head to register that.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Yeah, it was very cool.
And going back, as I understand it, you were quite a good athlete back in the day. You played hockey and lacrosse, and you even got a college scholarship. What kind of, obviously you were into music too as a kid as well, but what led you down the path of music ultimately?
That was always a passion. I was doing gigs here in New York City, still, all the while, playing sports. But what ultimately led me down the musical journey was I was living in Italy and hosting an open mic night there, and everybody's somewhat impressed with what I was doing. And when I came home, I just decided to move to LA and take my shot, and I was fortunate enough to meet this guy. So I'm glad it all went that way.
Yeah, as am I.
And that was actually my next question. From what I understand, it took a little while. You were living out of your car in LA, and then can you talk about maybe that time, and then can both of you kind of speak on the genesis of the band and how it came together?
Yeah, after meeting him, we met at a gig, and even after meeting him, I think I was living in my car, but
yeah, I remember that.
It was more, having great friends in LA, letting me crash on the couch, over the weekends and stuff. It was during the week that was always tough, but yeah, we just wanted to do something special, and I think it took some time for us to figure out exactly how we were going to go about it musically. There was a real struggle between me, him, and Justin about what this was, and then ultimately it just came down to doing what felt natural, which was playing blues-based rock and roll tunes.
Yeah, it's funny. We'd play all these 70s classic rock covers, those were our only gigs really, and but then when we'd write songs, I think we got a little overthinky there, and so our originals didn't mirror that. Started to not mirror that style at all. We still had, When I'm Gone and kind of these other, an early version of When I'm Gone and other songs that kind of fit in with that chorale, but then we started to go in this other direction. But I think it was good too, but I think it wasn't as natural. And, when our manager heard When I'm Gone, I think it really kind of and he was like, oh, that's enough. He literally said to Mark, that's a number one rock radio hit. And so that kind of started the journey, and we were like, that makes sense. That's us being us.
And you mentioned When I'm Gone, and, it turns out your manager was right because it went to number one, and you guys had the distinction of being the only unsigned act ever to hit number one on the Billboard Mainstream Rock chart. Can you talk about when you first heard that news and kind of what it meant for you, given your path and journey along the way?
Yeah, it was. I mean, obviously that's a great milestone. It's never been done before. It was a really cool thing. But I say all the time, it wasn't by choice that we were the first unsigned rock band. We definitely wanted to sign with somebody. I don't know. I don't really remember what the options were, but it just didn't happen for whatever reason. The deals weren't all that great, and we just decided to go ahead and do it ourselves. And when you get the news that you're number one, and then it stayed there for another week, and it was pretty cool. We all felt a great sense of accomplishment, and it was way more than any of us had expected, to happen up to that point. So, I still look back on that very fondly. We'll hope it can happen again, right?
Yeah.
And you're kind of on the way up there with the new single "Rolling Sevens," which is climbing up the chart. Can you talk about that song, both musically and lyrically?
Musically, take that one.
Rolling Sevens, yeah. Well, it started with a riff that is the chorus riff, and I actually wrote it with a little demo I made myself, and it was like really fast. But then when I started noodling it around the guys in a rehearsal for another song, we just ended up playing it the way it is, a lot slower and a lot swingier and a lot groovier. And I remember laughing to myself. I was like, well, I'm never going to play the guys the real demo now because this is totally better. And I actually really like that. I mean, I like, just to talk about songwriting for a sec, I like it when the group writes the song the most. I mean, of course, I always want to imagine I'm like the mad genius who just walks into rehearsals like, blam, here's the song with all the lyrics. But I think the best, most original stuff is when everybody's either unintentional or intentional personality kind of weighs in on it. And that shaped that song. And then I was noodling what is the intro. And I was just noodling, and Mark was like, well, what is that? And I was like, that's nothing. And he was like, no, that's something. And I was like, oh, okay. And so that's really how the song was born. He wanted it to start with the slow thing.
Yep.
And
He didn't.
I wanted it, yeah. I was like, because the chorus riff's so good, I was like, well, we just start with that, But we eventually, we had a different chorus for it, We had to realize that wasn't the move. And then really the actual lyrical and rhythmic part of, and the melody for the chorus happened in the studio. Just the final tweak of it. It was really it was really making it simpler was the adjustment that was made.
Which is always a good lesson for the kids out there making music. Just keep it simple. But
keep it simple.
Lyrically, the entire thing sort of came from, I was sitting in my bedroom at the place we were staying at in Byron Bay where we recorded. And I got this line, I don't know where it came from. I'm rolling sevens again. And then I started looking up all these, what does rolling sevens really mean at the craps table, or when you're gambling, and then all these different definitions popped up, and I was like, man, this is too good not to follow this lead, and I just sort of wrote around that.
Cool. And when we saw you guys open for Slash, I think we wrote in our review that vocally you kind of remind me a little of Steven Tyler, a little Bon Scott in there as well, and obviously, there are influences there. Yep. Can you guys talk about some of those influences, like growing up? And
I mean, yeah, those are two big ones. Brian Johnson as well, Robert Plant. There's some Mick Jagger in there at times. Chris Robinson, a lot of Chris Cornell too. Those are probably the big ones for me.
And as a guitarist?
My first hero was Jimmy Page for sure. I was first like real band worship too. Like just wished I had been born in 1958 or whatever I've had to have been born in, to be in that band. But and all those bands too. I think, but the big ones early on was Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, actually Duane Allman. I liked Aerosmith, the band, but I didn't really know I didn't know Joe Perry's name as a kid. He didn't have the same thing. And then like Slash, of course. I love Brian May. I like Stevie Ray Vaughan. I like Derek Trucks. I like all the guys. We all have so many influences, but
they are. A lot of them, a good percentage of them are probably 75% are classic rockish bass, you know, other than the 90s bands that we all love. But I love that no single one sort of stands out really more than the others, which is interesting. I mean, the comparisons that we get are like, the spectrum is so wide, you know, from 90s bands to 70s bands, 60s. It's crazy. So,
yeah, I mean, I think Tom Morello's cool, you know? I mean, that doesn't have much to do with what I'm doing, but, like, I just think he's totally original and cool, you know?
Yeah, now you'll be able to see those guys again, which is crazy.
Yes, yeah.
Rage is reunited. Obviously, we just talked a little bit about Aerosmith, and you guys covered Last Child, and you got a cool shout out from Tom Hamilton, bassist of Aerosmith. Pretty cool. Can you talk about that cover and then just getting kudos from a member of a legendary band like that?
Yeah, he was nice enough to tweet out that he liked the cover. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, we just went to Nashville and recorded that with Dave Cobb, and you know, we knew that his recording philosophy really fit our, you know, recording philosophy, so it was a pretty easy working situation. But we decided to do the song for Slash because we wanted to, you know, sort of tip our cap to him when we went out on the road with him, and we knew he loved Aerosmith, and we knew he loved that record, and we thought Last Child really fit our personality, as well as really loving the song. I mean, that's one of my favorite songs growing up. So, you know, it was a natural sort of progression to, you know, record that as we went into the studio with Dave.